a good morning to start working on this project. It is really chilly down here in the desert today. So we're gonna be making a super chunky knit throw, and these are by no means anything new. They've been all over Pinterest and Instagram. Oh, really quick before we get started, you can use any type of yarn you like. I'm gonna be using a really thick roving yarn, but it does get really fuzzy. So the care of these, like you can't throw these in the washing machine. It's more like spot treatment. But pick any type of yarn you like, and if it's not thick enough on its own, like a single strand of it, just remember you can always double up or even triple your yarn that you're using. So you can get away with using any kind you want. All right, let's go ahead and get started. I wanted a thick, chunky knit throw, so I'm going to be using this thicker yarn. This is roving yarn. I got a few rolls of this at Walmart, and it's very similar to merino wool. It has that same kind of texture. It's almost like a cotton ball kind of feel to it. Okay, I've got my ball of yarn. I'm going to have that sitting off to the side here, and then I've got the end of my yarn here. We're going to leave a tail on this. I'll leave about a foot on there. And then we're gonna make our slip knot. To do our slip knot, we're just gonna make a little loop. So I just kind of start like that. It's real easy to see there. Hopefully you can see that. And just cross it over and then reach through that loop and grab the tail and pull it through. And you can tighten it up, and that is a basic slip knot. And I always like to make sure before we get started making the chain that I have plenty of yarn unraveled there so it's easy to pull and work with. So I'm gonna slip that on my hand. So with our working yarn, wrap that around your hand and pull that through. Okay, so that's our first stitch. Wrap, pull through. Wrap, pull through. And there's the beginning of our chain. And as you're making your chain, try to make sure that your stitches are the same size. And then once you're happy with the length of your chain, we're gonna stop and just slide our hand out. So you're gonna leave that loop alone and the first stitch that it's in and move to this second one here. Okay, we're gonna reach through and pull your working yarn through and create a little loop coming out from the back to the front. And then continue down the chain, reaching through the top part of the stitch, pulling your working yarn through. Okay, just keep making loops all the way until you get to the end of your chain. Okay, so I went all the way to the end and I'm leaving that last stitch out, and we're gonna come back to this stitch and start making our next row. So we just go through each loop and pull through another loop, and just try to make sure that they all are staying about the same size. Okay, and now that we're at the end, we've done our last regular loop up there. We've got this one that we left kind of hanging off the side here. We're gonna do this one too. So reach through that just like all the rest of them and pull your working yarn through there to make a loop. And that kind of pulls it up and in line with the rest of them. We're gonna be headed this way again. So we're gonna go into our second one here and just keep making your loops. Oh, and the row of stitches on each side, these are gonna look one short, but don't worry about that. That's how it's supposed to be until we get to the end of the blanket, and then that's gonna be fixed. Okay, I'm just gonna continue making stitches, and I will see you in just a little bit. I've run out of yarn here, so I've got the end of my tail, and I'm gonna have to start a new roll of yarn. It depends on what type of yarn you're working with, but with this kind, it's very easy to spread it apart. And you can just kind of pull out some of the pieces and just kind of thin it out a bit. And then you're gonna take the new roll of yarn and you're just gonna thin that out a little. Okay, with both ends of your yarn thinned out, we just spread them out, and this is gonna help them blend together. That's why we thinned them out. So that way the thickness stays pretty similar. So I'm just laying one on top of the other and kind of folding it into the other one. And you sort of knead them together, and it just kind of works the fibers together. And of course, this is going to depend on what type of yarn you're working with, but being that this is very similar to merino wool, the fibers just kind of work together pretty easily. And there's your two ends of yarn now blended together and connected, and you can just continue on working your stitches. So it's really helpful if you have a wide open space where you can lay your work out and kind of see what you're doing as you're going. And it just helps to avoid missing a stitch, because if you miss a stitch, which can actually happen really easily, you know, maybe it's bunched up or kind of like, you know, maybe it got pulled down or something and it's a little bunched up, and you just move on to the next one and you do your stitch, it can kind of tighten up. So it looks like everything is in line and everything is right, but then you find out later on when you shake out your work or something that, oh, look at that, you missed a stitch. The only way to fix it is to yank out all the work you did and do it again. So you can count your stitches as you're working. That'll help avoid missing a stitch too. Or just kind of spread your work out on your space or your table, whatever you're working on, and just make sure that everything looks good before you move on to the next row. And especially this last loop on the edge, sometimes that can accidentally get like tucked under or something, and you might not see it, and you might just, you know, turn directions and start going back the other way, and then you find out later on that, oops, you missed one of the little loops on the side here. So you just want to take your time and enjoy the process of making your work, and just making sure that you get all the stitches and don't miss any. And once you get to the sides of the throw you want, we're gonna stop on one end. Okay, so here's our working yarn and our last stitch on this side. I'm just gonna slip my fingers through and slip through this first stitch there. Grab our working yarn and pull through. And then the next one, working yarn, pull through. And just continue down the line in each stitch. Okay, so hopefully as we're going along here, you're able to see what we're doing. So when you grab that stitch, each one, I turn it to face that one, the one that you're holding, and then slide through. And then grab your working yarn and pull through both. Okay, so we're coming up to the last stitch that's just off the side here. Just do the same thing, repeat. Okay, got the tail of my yarn, and in that last stitch, we're just going to grab the whole tail and pull that through. And pull it tight. And once you've secured the knot, just flip it over, and I'm actually going to cut this tail a little bit shorter. And you just tuck it in to the back stitches. You can tuck it into any stitches you want. I'm just going to go through the first few here along the edge. So we've just back stitched it through a few stitches there. And then this is the corner where we first started, so I have that little tail still left out here that I haven't back stitched yet. Just weave it back through a few stitches. And just enough to be able to hide that tail. Just to where it looks blended in and you can't see it at all from the front. Okay guys, so that is the alternative to the merino wool. This is very fuzzy though, so just keep that in mind. It's a little like knitting with cotton mulls. And also the care is kind of like that too. So just know that ahead of time. We can always do another one of these, you know, different versions of them in the future if you want to see more options. So we can definitely do that. But this is very cozy. It's just a matter of, you know, being very gentle when using it, because it is pretty delicate using that roving yarn. All right, you guys, thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed, and stay cozy, and we will have more DIYs coming up. So I will see you in the next video. Bye guys.